The SEALs followed the sniper along the jagged ridge, moving fast and low, every step measured against the constant rain of bullets rising from below. The enemy fighters were scaling the rocks like predators, refusing to let go of their prey. The commander urged his team forward, knowing hesitation meant being cut down in the open. Yet even as they pressed deeper into the ridgeline, their minds churned with questions. Who was this phantom who moved with such certainty, who carried scars across his face and skill in every shot, and why had he waited until the moment of their death to intervene? The sniper led them into a narrow path hidden by boulders, the passage twisting sharply and forcing them to move in single file again. The sounds of pursuit grew louder behind them, shouts carried on the wind boots, scraping against stone, climbing ever higher. The SEALs tightened their grips on weapons, their breaths sharp and shallow. The commander glanced back once to see enemy silhouettes, rising against the night sky like shadows reaching for them faster than expected. The sniper raised his rifle without hesitation, dropping 2 climbers with calm precision. But there were more coming, and no guarantee this path would stay hidden for long. The ridge ended in a sudden plateau, a flat stretch of stone exposed to the canyon below. The SEALs spread out, forming a perimeter, their eyes scanning for threats, while the sniper crouched in the center, rifle across his knees. He studied them with eyes that carried the weight of too many battles, and when he finally spoke, his voice was low, steady, cutting through the rush of wind. "You were never supposed to make it out of that ravine. You were marked from the start." The commander narrowed his gaze, demanding answers, but before the sniper could continue, gunfire erupted again from below. The plateau shook with the impact of rounds slamming against stone. Enemy fighters had reached the far side of the ridge, their weapons spitting fire into the night. The SEALs returned, fire-disciplined bursts holding the line, but their magazines were thinning fast. Every bullet counted, and the enemy showed no sign of slowing. The sniper joined the fight, his rifle cracking like thunder each. Shot exact and lethal, the attackers fell one by one, but still they climbed still. They surged upward with the relentlessness of a tide, and the SEALs knew they were trapped against open stone with nowhere left to retreat. The commander crawled close to the sniper, shouting over the chaos, "What do you mean? Marked from the start. Who sent you here?" The sniper kept firing, not even glancing his way, but his voice was iron. "Someone higher than either of us decided your mission was never meant to succeed. You were bait to draw them out, and when you were finished, you were meant to die." The words sank like ice through the commander's chest, rage and confusion clashing in his mind. Yet he had no time to demand more answers, because another grenade arced through the night, landing near their cover. The explosion rocked the plateau, spraying shards of stone into the air. The SEALs scrambled back, coughing through dust. Their ears ringing from the blast, the sniper rolled into a new position, firing 3 rounds in quick succession, each one dropping another enemy before they could throw a second grenade. The commander pushed his team tighter against the edge, their ammunition dwindling to nearly nothing. He could see it in their faces, the weight of fatigue and the fire of determination colliding, but he also knew the truth. They could not outlast this wave alone, not without something more from the sniper. The sniper finally shifted his gaze toward the commander, his expression cold, unreadable, and yet carrying a hint of something darker. "I was sent here to watch you die, but I chose otherwise." His words cut sharper than the rifle cracks. The SEALs froze in disbelief, their lives hanging in the balance of a man who had been ordered to abandon them and yet saved them. Instead, the commander's mind raced, trust and suspicion twisting together. But there was no time to untangle the truth. Enemy fighters were nearly at the ridge edge, their weapons rising, their shouts growing louder by the second. The sniper lifted his rifle once more, his eyes narrowing as he scanned the enemy positions. Then he spoke with finality. "If you want to live, you will follow me, and you will follow without question, because the next path leads to the only chance." You have left. The SEALs exchanged brief glances. hearts pounding their weapons nearly empty, their commander's decision weighing over them like the stone of the ridge. And in that moment, with the enemy charging closer with death clawing at their heels, he raised his hand, giving the signal to move and to trust the ghost in the rocks once more. The sniper led them along the ridge, his pace swift and exact his movements, as if he had walked this path 100 times before the SEALs followed. Closed their bodies, aching their ammo running dangerously low. The shouts of the enemy still carried up from below, echoing like wolves baying for blood. The commander felt every second stretch tighter, every step closer to collapse, but the sniper never faltered, never slowed, guiding them through cracks and hidden turns across the jagged ridge, as if every stone had been placed for his hand and his rifle alone, and that mystery weighed heavier with every breath. They reached a break in the ridge where the path seemed to end in sheer drop, the canyon yawning below, black and endless. The squad froze weapons, up eyes scanning for any path forward, but there was none. The commander spun to the sniper, his voice low sharp. "You said this was our chance." The sniper only pointed across the gap to a shadowed ledge, barely visible in the pale moonlight, a leap that looked impossible. The squad shifted uneasily, hearts pounding, knowing failure meant falling into darkness. The sniper said nothing. Moore only crouched and prepared to leap himself. Without hesitation, the sniper launched across the gap, his body a dark silhouette against the sky, landing silent and sure on the far ledge. He turned, crouched, and raised his rifle, covering the SEALs. As if daring them to follow, the commander gritted his teeth and leapt his boots, hitting stone hard, his body rolling into cover. The next man followed, then another, each one pushing through fear and exhaustion to make the impossible jump the last. Soldier almost slipped his boots scraping loose rock, but the sniper fired a single shot, dropping an enemy, climbing up behind him, giving him the fraction of focus he needed to land. Now across the gap, the SEALs pressed on, following the sniper into a narrow corridor of stone. The sounds of pursuit faded slightly, the path forcing the enemy to funnel below them. But the commander knew it was only time before they found another route up the ridge. His squad crawled forward, muscles trembling there, vision narrowed from exhaustion, but the sniper pressed onward, his voice finally breaking the silence. "Your mission was compromised from the beginning. I was assigned to watch, confirm, and leave you all behind. But I saw something different tonight, and I could not follow the order." The words struck the commander like a blade, yet they explained everything. The ambush, the overwhelming numbers, the sudden intervention. He stared at the sniper's scarred face, reading nothing but steel there was. No lie in his voice, only a truth too heavy to carry, yet too clear to deny. The commander wanted to ask why, to demand what had driven him to turn against his own orders. But before he could speak, a burst of fire cut across the rocks ahead, forcing them all down into cover. The enemy had flanked them faster than expected, and the path forward was once again blocked by gunfire. The SEALs returned fire. What little ammunition they had left, spitting into the night sparks, leaping from stone, every round precious, every breath a prayer. The sniper crawled to the front, his rifle steady each shot, deliberate every hostile that rose against them, falling like dominoes. The commander watched him work with awe and suspicion, knowing this man was no ordinary ally, but something more dangerous, something forged in secrets they were never meant to see. Yet in this moment, none of that mattered. What mattered was survival, and survival rested on the sniper's scope. At last, the final enemy ahead dropped. Silence stretching across the ridge, broken only by the panting of exhausted lungs. The sniper lowered his rifle and turned his gaze toward the horizon. Faint lights flickered there, the promise of exfil, the promise of escape. He rose to his feet and spoke again. "This is where we part ways. You will reach your extraction point if you move now, but if you stay to question me, you will not leave alive." The commander stood glaring at him, torn between gratitude, suspicion, and fury. But before he could choose, the sniper slung his rifle and began to fade into the rocks. The squad moved toward the horizon, their bodies carrying them more from instinct than strength. Each step dragging them closer to salvation, yet their eyes kept drifting back, to where the sniper had stood moments ago, now gone, swallowed by stone and shadow, like he had never been there at all. They reached the final rise where a faint helicopter silhouette hovered in the distance, its blades chopping the night air. Their commander gave the signal, and they broke into the last sprint, their boots pounding against rock, their hearts screaming with the knowledge that survival was now within reach. As the helicopter lifted them from the ridge, the squad stared back at the canyon below the battlefield that had nearly been their grave smoke still curling from shattered stone, the echoes of gunfire fading into silence. They had survived, but only because of a ghost in the rocks, a man who had betrayed his orders. To save them, a man who had vanished as suddenly as he had appeared. And in that silence, the commander knew they had crossed paths with something far greater than chance, something that would haunt them long after the mission end. The squad leader finally gave the signal with a sharp wave, and the SEALs pushed deeper into the cut of the rocks. The world around them thundered with gunfire, but inside the narrow passage the air was thick with silence, broken only by the scrape of boots against stone. They moved fast, crouched low, rifles at the ready, their bodies tense from hours of combat, but their minds sharpened now by the unseen hand that had guided them this far. Yet every step into the jagged canyon walls drew them, farther from their planned exfil point and deeper into unknown ground, and that uncertainty gnawed at them with every breath. The sniper fire still cracked from above, clean, deliberate, precise. The shots seemed to anticipate enemy moves before they even happened every time a hostile tried to flank the SEALs. The shot came every time a soldier raised heavy fire. The shot silenced him. It was uncanny, almost unreal, the kind of perfection that spoke not only of skill, but of experience honed through years of invisible battles. Yet the question dug into the minds of the squad: who was this figure, and why reveal themselves now? After all these hours of silence, why risk exposure in this doomed canyon? The voice returned over the comms, steady now. Clearer than before, it carried an authority the SEALs could not deny. Keep moving. You have 30 seconds before they collapse this route. You cannot hesitate. The commander clenched his jaw, wanting to demand answers, but the urgency in the tone pushed him forward. He signaled, and the squad followed each step, pressing deeper until the path suddenly opened into a cavernous hollow beneath the rocks, wide enough to conceal them for a moment, wide enough to give them air to breathe, yet filled with the echo of uncertainty. Because if the sniper had led them here, then what was waiting? Inside the hollow, the SEALs set a perimeter, rifles aimed outward, eyes scanning every shadow. One soldier checked his gear, another covered the rear, while the commander finally broke his silence. "Who are you?" he demanded over comms. "What do you want?" The reply came after a pause, steady, cold, focused, survive. "First, then I will explain." The team exchanged glances, unease rippling through them. None of them liked being pawns. None of them liked being guided by an unseen ghost. Yet none could deny that without the sniper they would already be dead, and that reality weighed heavy on their trust. Then the sound of boots echoed through the canyon. Dozens, maybe more. The enemy was closing in. The sniper fire above slowed almost as if conserving rounds, each shot placed with greater patience, but the volume of hostile voices grew louder, closer. The SEALs could hear them barking orders, sweeping flashlights. Through the cracks in the rocks, the squad tightened their grips on their weapons. The hollow suddenly felt too small, too exposed, too vulnerable. They knew that within moments, the enemy would flood into this chamber, and the last stand they had avoided earlier might now arrive here in the dark. The sniper spoke again, this time almost in a whisper over the channel. "There is a path behind the hollow, a tunnel that will take you higher to the ridge, but it is narrow and only one can pass at a time. You will need to decide the order carefully." The commander froze, looking at his squad, each one staring back with the same fire in their eyes. They were brothers and sisters in arms, none above the other, none willing to take the safer path first. But choices had to be made, and time was already bleeding away with the sound of enemy boots closing fast. One of the younger SEALs stepped forward. His voice, low, steady. "I will go last. Cover you all until the end." His words struck the hollow like stone. His commander shook his head, but before an argument could rise, the sniper voice cut through cold and sharp. "No, you will all go, and you will go now. Hesitation means death." The authority in the tone left no room for debate, and the commander gave the order. The first man slipped into the narrow passage, crawling forward into the dark as the others prepared to follow. Yet none of them could shake the feeling that once they entered the tunnel, their fate would no longer be their own. As the last soldier prepared to move, the hollow erupted with light, and the enemy burst through the outer edge, rifles raised, voices shouting orders. The SEALs turned their weapons toward the entrance, hearts pounding as they waited for the inevitable clash. But in that instant, another rifle cracked from above the sniper again, precise, deliberate, cutting down the first wave of hostiles before they could take aim. Yet the sheer number pressing forward made clear that this fight was only just beginning, and the tunnel might not remain an escape for long. The first SEAL crawled into the tunnel, his body scraping against jagged stone, his breath harsh inside the cramped passage. The others followed one after another, rifles slung tight across their backs, the narrow shaft forcing them into silence. They could hear the chaos behind them, the clash of gunfire, the echoes of shouts, and the sniper shots ringing sharp and deliberate overhead. The world behind them burned with noise, yet inside the tunnel all that remained was the sound of their own heartbeats pounding against stone. But none of them could be sure the tunnel truly led to safety. The commander brought up the rear, glancing back toward the hollow where flashes of muzzle fire still sparked against the night. He knew the sniper was still fighting, holding back wave after wave with impossible accuracy. But for how long no lone rifle could hold against an army? The commander pressed forward, crawling into the tight shaft, his muscles straining with every pull, every second weighed down by the thought that at any moment the stone could collapse, or worse, the enemy could flood the tunnel before they reached the end, the silence pressing in thicker than the air inside. The shaft the SEALs pushed forward in single file, their shoulders scraping raw against rough stone, the tunnel angled upward, twisting and curving as if carved by water over centuries. The air grew colder and thinner, their bodies aching under the strain of movement in confined space. One SEAL whispered that he could see faint light ahead, and that whisper was enough to carry them forward faster, even as exhaustion bit into their bones. But the commander remained cautious, knowing that light could mean salvation or the mouth of another trap, and the truth waited only steps ahead. The tunnel widened slightly, giving them just enough space to crouch and breathe for a moment. One of the soldiers lifted his headlamp, flicking it on for a second, before snapping it back off. The walls glistened damp and jagged as though they had been scarred by old explosives. The commander noted every detail, his instincts screaming that someone had once used these tunnels for war. These were not natural paths, but forgotten routes left behind from battles long before their time. And if that was true, then whoever guided them here knew the ground better than anyone alive. But who was that hidden sniper, really? The voices of the enemy echoed faintly. Behind them, growing louder with each second, the squad tightened their grips on weapons. Though firing in this tunnel would be suicide, the commander urged them forward again, each step now faster, more urgent, as the faint light ahead grew brighter. It spilled across stone in a pale glow, flickering with the rhythm of firelight. The tunnel was leading to an opening, and the SEALs knew they would soon face whatever waited at the exit. Their lungs burned, their muscles screamed, but their hearts pounded with the promise of open air. They emerged into a high ridge overlooking the canyon. The night spread out beneath them like a sea of shadows. The enemy forces below swarming like ants, searching every crevice, every shadow for their prey from this height. The SEALs could see just how heavily they had been outnumbered, hundreds of fighters sweeping the rocks with ruthless precision, and yet the sniper had kept them alive, had given them this chance of escape. The squad pressed low against the stone edge rifles, scanning the dark, unsure whether to move further along the ridge or wait for the sniper to reveal himself. Yet the silence stretched long and uneasy. Then a shape rose from the rocks above them, a figure cloaked in shadow rifle, slung across their back, moving with a grace too calm for the chaos below. The SEALs snapped their weapons up, ready to fire, but the figure raised one hand, slow, deliberate, signaling them to hold their fire. And in that moment, moonlight slid across, the scope of the rifle catching the edge of the sniper's face, a face weathered, scarred by years of battle, yet unmistakably calm. The commander froze, his weapon still raised, unsure if this was friend-foe or something far more complicated. The sniper spoke in a low voice, not through comms this time, but aloud, words carried only to those crouched close enough to hear. "You are not safe, yet they are hunting you still. We move now, or you will die here." The authority in the tone left no doubt. This was not a plea. This was an order. The SEALs exchanged glances, still caught between distrust and survival. But before a decision could be reached, gunfire erupted again from the canyon below. Bullets sparking against the ridge stone as enemy fighters spotted movement above and began to climb. The sniper crouched, raising the rifle once more and loosing a shot that dropped the first climber instantly. Then another round cracked, and another, each one as perfect as before. Yet the sheer number below guaranteed they would not hold this ridge long. The sniper turned back to the SEALs, eyes sharp and voice firm. "You wanted answers, you will have them, but only if you live to hear them move now before they reach the top." The SEALs tightened their grips on their weapons, their commander giving a sharp nod, and in that instant they chose to follow the ghost in the rocks. The night was heavy with silence, broken only by the distant echo of enemy patrols. The SEAL team had been deep in hostile territory for 3 days, their supplies low, their strength stretched thin, and their communications jammed. They knew extraction was compromised, and the ambush that waited for them now felt inevitable. Yet even as they crouched in the ravine beneath the looming rocks, each man and woman in the squad held their rifles steady, unwilling to give in to despair. But what none of them realized was that someone else watched from above, a figure who had been waiting for this very moment, unseen and unheard, and ready to alter the course of the night in a way they could not predict. The ambush came swift and merciless. Muzzle flashes lit up the darkness from 3 sides. Bullets rained down shattering stone around the SEALs as they pressed themselves against the earth. Each heartbeat felt like the last. Each breath was weighed with finality. The enemy closed in confident in their numbers and their firepower, while the SEALs counted every round left in their magazines each second, narrowing the gap between survival and certain death. But then, just as the squad leader gave the signal to prepare for a desperate last stand, a single sound cracked through the night, a shot so sharp and precise it silenced everything else for a heartbeat. The bullet found its mark. An enemy machine gunner crumpled before he could sweep the ravine with fire. The sudden shift stunned both sides. For a moment, the SEALs could not understand where the shot had come from, and the enemy hesitated, unsure if reinforcements had arrived. Then another shot rang out, and another, each one placed with surgical perfection, each one dropping a hostile target before they could even raise their sights. Confusion rippled through the attackers, and the SEALs exchanged brief glances, still pressed to the dirt, but with something new sparking in their eyes, a flicker of hope. The hidden sniper was not one of them. They knew that much. But their skill, their timing, and their decision to intervene changed everything. The squad leader whispered to his second-in-command, urging them to shift positions closer to the shadows of the rocks if they could align their movement with the mysterious sniper, they might carve out a path of escape, but it was a gamble. The enemy was regrouping and already shouting orders to flush out whoever dared disrupt their ambush. The air grew tighter, with the sense of a predator hunt closing in, but the sniper kept firing, and with each shot the battlefield tilted further toward chaos. The SEALs crawled low, moving in pairs, their gear scraping against the jagged ground. Every movement felt like it would give them away. Yet strangely, the enemy fire grew less coordinated, as if the sniper knew where to aim to break their command chain. One shot at a radio operator, one shot at a squad leader, one shot through the night at a heavy weapon that would have ended them in seconds. The SEALs understood now, whoever this sniper was, they were not simply helping by chance. They knew tactics. They knew pressure points. They fought like someone trained to dismantle an enemy force from the shadows. As the squad edged closer to the rocks, their commander looked up just in time to see the briefest glint of moonlight catching on a scope high above. The figure was barely visible, a ghost among the stone. But that glimpse carried a promise: someone was fighting with them. Someone who had chosen this moment to reveal themselves, but who and why remained unanswered questions. For now, the SEALs did not have the luxury of clarity. They had only seconds to act before the enemy realized their trap was unraveling. And just as they reached the first rise of stone, a new sound erupted. Not the crack of the sniper rifle, but the thunder of reinforcements pouring into the canyon. The enemy was calling everything they had into this fight, and the SEALs suddenly understood the sniper alone could not shift the tide forever. The next minutes would decide whether they lived or died, and the figure above remained hidden, waiting for the right moment to show more than just their aim. The canyon walls, shook with the force of reinforcements rushing in boots, pounding against rock, shouts echoing through the night. The SEALs pressed deeper into the shadows, clinging to cover with every ounce of discipline drilled into them. They had trained for hopeless moments like this. And yet there was a limit to how long skill alone could resist overwhelming numbers. Their commander felt the weight of the decision pressing on his chest. Either push forward toward the sniper's vantage point, or stay pinned down and be swallowed whole by the wave of enemy fighters. Either way, time was slipping, and the sniper had yet to show more than fleeting flashes of muzzle fire from above. The enemy poured suppressive fire into the ravine, sparks leaping from shattered stone bullets carving into the earth, forcing the SEALs flat against the ground. Their rifles barked back in sharp, disciplined bursts, but the imbalance of numbers grew clearer with each passing second, even as the sniper clipped one hostile after another. The flood of reinforcements filled every gap and every path of escape. Soon the enemy would be close enough to throw grenades into their hiding place. The squad leader clenched his jaw, knowing what that meant. The end of silence, and the start of chaos unless the sniper revealed more than steel precision. Then a voice crackled faintly through a private channel in their comms. It was distorted, low, urgent. A ghost through static moved toward the rocks. Now the commander froze his eyes. Scanning his team, none of them recognized the voice, but the message was impossible to ignore. Someone had patched into their encrypted frequency, and that someone knew exactly where they were and what they needed. The squad exchanged tense glances. Trust was a currency too costly to spend. Yet, in this moment, it might be the only way forward, and the commander signaled 2 fingers toward the rocks. They moved in bursts, 2 at a time, covering each other as gunfire rained down every step, dragging them closer to exposure. Yet every burst of sniper fire cleared just enough space for them to crawl and slide into new positions. It felt orchestrated, deliberate, as though the hidden marksmen were not simply assisting, but commanding the tempo of the entire battlefield. Still, the SEALs knew better than to place blind faith in shadows, and with every move closer to the rocks, their suspicion grew heavier, because if the sniper had their comms, if the sniper had planned this intervention, what else did the sniper know about them? The first man reached the base of the rocks, pressing against cold stone and signaling the rest forward. The air reeked of gunpowder and scorched metal. the sound of ricochets and shouts rising higher with each heartbeat. Then a grenade clattered nearby, bouncing once against stone and rolling into the shadows where the squad had just been seconds earlier. It exploded in a roar of flame and shockwave, sending shards of stone raining down, and for a brief instant it seemed the entire canyon had collapsed. Yet the sniper fired again. A single shot cutting through the roar, dropping the soldier who had hurled the grenade and giving the team the sliver of space they needed to push deeper into the rock. Cover sweat ran into their eyes. Their lungs burned with dust and adrenaline, yet none of them faltered. This was survival, and survival demanded absolute focus. But with each movement forward, the voice in their comms returned, guiding them. Turn left. Crawl under the ridge, keep moving, do not stop. It was as though the sniper saw every angle of the canyon, every hostile position, and every weakness the SEALs carried with them. But how was that possible? Who was this phantom guiding them through? Fire, who had the power to make death hesitate. As they pressed into a narrow cut in the rocks, the squad leader raised his fist, halting the movement. His instincts screamed that following further without answers would be walking into another trap. And yet staying behind meant annihilation. He tried to steady his breath, tried to ignore the pounding in his chest when the voice whispered again, low, urgent, almost personal. You are running out of time. Move now or none of you leave alive. The SEALs glanced at their commander, waiting for the order suspended in the narrow space between trust and destruction, the sniper above still firing with precision, the enemy still pressing closer from all sides, and the night itself holding its breath for what choice would be made.